Thinking back to that morning, it really just felt like any other day starting out. The sun was coming up, casting this soft golden light over the city, and everything seemed so normal. There was that usual crispness in the air, and you could hear birds up on the rooftops. The city was just waking up. Traffic starting to hum in the distance, people slowly getting ready for the day. Honestly, it felt peaceful, like nothing out of the ordinary was about to happen. Mornings here are usually pretty calm. You'd see a few people out early, maybe some shopkeepers opening up, or joggers making their way through the park. There's always this gentle fog that hangs around, and the dew on the grass. It's kinda beautiful, actually. But, that day, something was different. I guess none of us could have known that the peace would be broken by something so awful. It's the kind of thing you never expect in your own town. As the city started to wake up, kids were getting ready for school, laughing and running down the alleys. Adults were out, sipping tea, chatting with neighbors. The roads were filling up with rickshaws and bikes, and the market vendors were just starting to set up their stalls. It was all so familiar, just the usual morning routine, But looking back, it's strange how quickly things can change. In the middle of all that, some workers were already in the botanical garden, doing what they always do, trimming plants, clearing paths. That place is usually so quiet in the morning, almost like a little escape from the rest of the city. I've walked there myself a few times, and it's hard to imagine anything bad happening in a spot like that. But then, something caught their eye, something that just didn't fit. They found this toy, half hidden in the grass. It looked like it had been there a while, colors faded and all. And then, not far from it, there was this empty patch in the greenery that just seemed off. When they went to check, well, I still get a chill thinking about it. They found a child there, and it's honestly hard to put into words how that must have felt. It's just, no one expects to come across something like that, especially not in a place meant for peace. Things changed really fast after that. The police showed up, put up tape everywhere, and started their investigation. You could see it on their faces. Nobody was prepared for what they found. The garden, which was always so welcoming, suddenly felt completely different. It was just heavy, I guess. Like the whole place had changed in an instant. That was really the start of everything. News spread so quickly and people were scared, confused, just trying to make sense of it all. I remember feeling unsettled, like if something like this could happen here, maybe nowhere is really as safe as we think. It's a tough thing to accept, and honestly, I still don't have all the answers. That morning, which started out so normal, ended up changing everything for a lot of people. There's something about this place that always felt familiar to me. The streets were full of life, colorful, a bit noisy, but in a good way. Every morning you'd catch the smell of fresh bread and spices drifting out of open windows. Sometimes, if you listened closely, you could hear the soft ring of a bicycle bell or someone laughing down the block. People here actually knew each other. It wasn't unusual to get a wave from a neighbor on a balcony or to see someone sharing an umbrella when the rain caught them off guard. It's those little things that made the neighborhood feel like one big family. Kids would run around in the narrow lanes, their laughter bouncing off the walls. The market was always buzzing. Honestly, it was the heart of everything. Vendors shouting out their specials, friends catching up over tea, swapping stories and gossip. By evening, things would slow down. Families gathered for dinner and the streets would empty out, leaving just the soft glow of lanterns. It was peaceful, in its own way. I always liked that part of the day. The botanical garden and eco-park sat on the edge of town. A quiet spot, really. On weekends you'd see families wandering the paths, kids chasing after butterflies, older folks just sitting and taking it all in. It was a place to breathe, to let your worries fade for a while. I remember thinking how easy it was to feel at home there, surrounded by flowers and the sound of birds. It's funny how a place can make you feel like everything's going to be okay, even if just for a moment. But then, everything changed. The news of what happened spread fast, faster than I expected, honestly. People started gathering in small groups, talking in hushed voices, trying to figure out what was going on. The streets I'd walked 100 times suddenly felt different. Shadows seemed longer. and every closed door made me wonder. It's strange how quickly a place can go from feeling safe to, well, not. The hills, which used to be where people went to get away, became the center of attention. Police cars lined the roads, their lights cutting through the mist. I remember standing back, watching, not sure if I wanted to know what they'd find. It was unsettling, seeing a place I'd always thought of as peaceful turn into the backdrop for something so dark. As more details came out, it got harder to go about things like normal. People kept to themselves more. The streets emptied out earlier. I noticed parents holding their kids a little closer, neighbors checking in on each other more than usual. It's like everyone was waiting for answers, but none seemed to come. The routines we all relied on suddenly felt fragile, I guess. The sense of safety we had, it was gone. In those quiet moments before sunrise, I'd catch myself thinking about how much had changed. There was grief, sure, and a lot of uncertainty, but even with all that, I saw people trying to look out for each other, to hold on to whatever hope they could. It wasn't perfect, but there was a kind of strength in that too. It was just after dawn when the first workers wandered into the botanical gardens, probably expecting nothing more than another ordinary day. The mist hung low, and the only sounds were their footsteps on the gravel. There was a certain stillness in the air, maybe a little heavier than usual. Some of the gardeners glanced at each other, as if they could sense something was different, though no one could quite put their finger on it. Sometimes, places seem to hold their breath before something is discovered. As the morning routines began, one gardener noticed something odd in a thick patch of greenery. With a bit of hesitation, they stepped closer, heart probably racing, and gently moved the leaves aside. What they found was unimaginable. A young girl, hidden in the shadows and dew. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The garden, usually a place of peace, suddenly felt unfamiliar. It's hard to describe the shock that must have rippled through the roosters. No one expects to find something like that. The authorities were called almost right away. Police cars arrived, their lights cutting through the morning haze. Officers moved quickly, putting up tape and asking people to step back. Forensic teams in white suits got to work, carefully searching for anything that might help explain what had happened. The garden, once so quiet, was suddenly full of movement and hushed voices. It was a lot to take in. Word spread quickly. The girl had been reported missing just the day before, her face already familiar from posters and news stories. Now the worst fears seemed to be confirmed. It's hard to imagine the heartbreak that swept through the community. The garden, once a place for families and laughter, suddenly felt changed, marked by sadness and so many questions. Investigators moved carefully, looking for anything that might help them understand what had happened. There were scattered belongings, signs that something had gone terribly wrong, and the way the body was hidden. It all suggested this wasn't just a tragic accident. Every detail was noted, every clue collected. It must have been painstaking work, and no one wanted to miss anything important. The garden, with its familiar paths and statues, suddenly looked different. Everything seemed to carry a new weight. It's strange how a place can change so quickly, from somewhere safe to somewhere that feels uncertain. People who knew the garden well probably found themselves looking at it with new eyes. The investigation quickly grew, drawing in detectives, forensic experts, and reporters. The whole nation seemed to be watching, hoping for answers. There was a sense that everyone wanted to understand what had happened and maybe in some way to help. The search for the truth was just beginning, and no one knew quite where it would lead. She was only 8 years old, and people always talked about her bright smile. There was just something about her, so full of life, always laughing. When she disappeared, it was like the whole family, and honestly, the whole neighborhood, just changed. It's hard to put into words, but you could feel the sadness everywhere. Losing someone so young, it really makes you think about how delicate innocence is. Sometimes it feels like it can vanish in an instant. People started leaving flowers, little toys, candles, just anything to show they cared. I guess it was their way of saying she mattered, even if words weren't enough. Her story, it really got people talking about how we look after our kids. Maybe it made us all a bit more cautious, or maybe just more aware. I think in some way, the community came together, wanting justice for her and hoping to keep other children safe. It's not easy, but maybe that's how we heal. It all started when the girl just vanished while playing close to home. Turns out a neighbor had coaxed her away with some sweets. It's hard to imagine that kind of trust being broken. Cameras later showed the neighbor leading her into the botanical garden. Everything happened so quickly. The whole neighborhood was left in shock. When the suspect finally confessed, it came out that he'd taken advantage of her innocence. This whole case really showed how important it is to look out for each other. And to protect kids. Always. I find myself wondering how investigators managed to piece everything together, methodically gathering evidence, trying to reconstruct what really happened, step by step. It seems like the forensic teams and all that surveillance footage must have played a huge role in tracking the suspect's movements, though I imagine there were moments of uncertainty along the way. And then there are the witness interviews, each one adding a bit more context, maybe even challenging the investigators' assumptions about motive. I can't help but think about the community's role here, residents coming forward, offering tips, sometimes just hoping to help, even if the answers weren't always clear. Eventually the suspect was found and arrested, but I wonder what it felt like in that moment, for everyone involved. Maybe his capture brought some relief, but I imagine the community was still left with questions and a lingering sense of unease. Looking back, I'm struck by how thorough the investigation was, yet I can't help but wonder if every piece of the puzzle truly fit, or if some things will always remain uncertain. When the suspect was finally arrested, it felt like a real shift. Something had changed, all because the police just kept going, even when things got tough. During questioning, he admitted what happened. His story lined up with what investigators had already found. People paid close attention to the trial. There was this quiet hope that justice would finally be served. For many, the courtroom became a place where they could start to find some closure, even if it was just a little. Of course, nothing could erase what happened, but seeing justice pursued gave people a way to move forward. This case really put both the legal system and the community to the test, and somehow they found the strength to keep going. There was this quiet, heavy sadness that settled over the neighborhood after what happened. People gathered, some with candles, some just standing together, not really knowing what to say. You could feel how much everyone cared, even if words didn't come easy. The story was everywhere, on the news, in conversations at the corner store. Folks started talking about how things needed to change, about keeping kids safe. It wasn't perfect, but you could sense a real, honest hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this pain. The tragedy revealed just how vulnerable even the quietest neighborhoods can be. It made it clear that real change, stronger policies and better protection for children is urgently needed. People started talking, learning, and working together to keep their community safer. Demands for legal reform and better support for victims grew stronger. The community found new resolve to prevent anything like this from happening again. And while nothing can erase the loss, seeing neighbors come together, rain falling outside, lights glowing in the darkness, reminds us that hope and action often begin in the quietest moments when we choose to care for one another.